happy Monday. We hope you had a enjoyable weekend. How was your weekend?
Uh, isn't it Wednesday?
It might be.
It's been a long couple of days, I tell you. Yesterday at Eastern Washington University, we invited the Attorney General out to visit with us on the NEPA litigation, the National Environmental Policy Act. It's an act that protects our environment. Recently, I was at the Tribal State Centennial Accord, and we had the Attorney General come out and visit with us. So I invited him virtually to come and speak to our Native students and our environmental science students. And he gave a great update on the litigation.
That's really cool. I was thinking about this, and you said how many people did you have on there?
Oh, on the webinar we had 85 people.
Which is at the end of the quarter for. Was this requirement for people to tune in?
I asked my students. They kind of understood that it was required for me, but you can't require folks to do additional hours outside of the regular classroom. So.
Yeah. Well, 85 is a pretty good turnout, especially when it's the end of the term. People are studying for midterms. Academics are studying and getting ready to give their midterms and so forth. So have that many people on, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was Attorney General Bob Ferguson and his Chief Environmental Protection Chief of Staff, Bill Sherman. And they just did an excellent job. The Trump administration was gutting out regulations and protections under the law. And so we utilize these laws to require federal agencies to do reviews on any major building, any permitting, any major activity that will significantly affect the environment.
Wow, that's great. Well, it's a good thing that you're doing that, and it was really cool, Bob Ferguson. I think, in a way, I think all Fergusons are kind of cool. No, it's kind of cool. Bob
Your
Ferguson.
cousin.
to take the time, that was really cool. I know his schedule is really busy, but that was really cool.
Yeah,
so,
my students appreciated it.
We have a ton of stories to cover, so moving right along, we're going to go ahead and cut to our first one. We have there was I'm just going to go ahead and read a little bit of this. This is a big win for no more stolen ancestors fight. This is a Seminole tribe. I know this is a little bit, but this really affects tribes on a national level. Recently, policy changes at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. will provide an unprecedented opportunity to repatriate thousands of ancestors and sacred objects to the Seminole and other tribes across the U.S. The Repatriation Committee of the Seminole Tribe of Florida led the push for revision, which includes years of emotional meetings. The eventual enactment of this policy is a historic victory for Indigenous rights and an encouraging sign that the National Museum the National Museum of Natural History recognizes the importance of returning ancestors to their final resting place. Now that, if you ask me, is really cool. There's I hear over and over again where tribes are fighting back, and we're definitely hearing it here in this country, but I know it's something that's been a big problem over the years for First Nations in Canada. So,
well, here in the United States, just recently we celebrated NAGPRA. NAGPRA is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. It was passed November 16th, 1990 to resolve the disposition of Native American cultural items and human remains under the control of federal agencies and institutions that receive federal funding, such as museums. This is a real serious issue. We have non-Native folks that have been collectors since first contact. They've been collecting and taking our ceremonial objects and as well as our ancestors' human remains. So it's been a constant struggle for the past 30 years.
Well, I know I had a real first-hand experience with this stuff when we were down in Santa Fe. And I really struggled because some of those art galleries in there have some of the just old things like pipe stones. They have breastplate, things that are just really old, and for them just to be out selling them, I think, I kind of wish it would make it back to the tribe or the family.
So that's the whole point of NAGPRA. I've had the opportunity to travel, whether you're at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., or if you're at the British Life and Culture Museum in London, I look at those and there's these beautiful objects, regalia, ceremonial objects, and it's a shame that it's not in tribal hands with tribal people. Right here in some of our museums in the Northwest, I've had tribal elders that said, you know, that bow and arrow should be with their family. We don't go out into farmers' fields and dig up your grandma and grandpa and take their wedding ring. Those objects are sacred. And so this is a continual issue. I remember one of the Saigon brothers saying, there was a very well-thinking museum curator who said, we want to protect those items for you. And he said, that paternalistic attitude has already seeped in here. These are our cultural objects.
And when you talk about that, I always think of a couple different things. I think of, Mike Marchand. I heard him speak again back at the Sovereignty Through Sustainability lecture series when he said that when colonizers arrived here at first contact, they talked about these pristine, untouched forests. And it wasn't that they were pristine and untouched, it's that they were well managed by the tribes that were in that area. And when we talk about things that are being, brought back, one of the things I think is really exciting is there's a good push and a good movement now for the land acknowledgement, going into and being able to acknowledge the people. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter where you're at in the United States, you're on some tribe's land. And if you think about it in these terms, if you can break it down to, if you sat right where you're sitting right now and thought, okay, 100 yards to my north is where my great-great-great-great-grandmother raised a crop, or picked huckleberries, or, all fished, or hunted, or all these different things. And you can think about from then till now, and then think about the land acknowledgement, and you can express that to other people, and they can understand. Where your house now sits, that's where those are my ancestors. That's where they built their fire. That's where they camped, or so forth. And I think all of this movement is really leads into helping overcome invisibility, and that's something that we've had a big problem with in this country, and that kind of leads us into our next story. And I'm going to try to keep moving things along because we have a lot of stories today. But the next story I thought was pretty cool, and I just want to share this one with you. It was this came out of Indian Country Today, when something else equals invisible. And it was actually an Associated Press story that ran in Indian Country Today. And the opening headline says, it speaks to how Indigenous people remain outside of the consciousness of everyday Americans and exist either in an elsewhere or in the past. And I think that that's just crazy. First of all, in the photograph, they're going to cut back to it real quick. But we just want to give a big shout out to Freddie Lane, who made it into the Associated Press. That's him in the sweatshirt that was designed by Jacob Johns for the Lummi tribe when they had their Get Out and Vote Big campaign. But when we start looking at the invisibility problem, it's something that's been going on for so long. We're such a small part of the population. It's just crazy.
Yeah, no, we seen that. We were watching the election results, and we asked the question, what, something else? That must be American Indians, Native Americans. You go down, African Americans, Asian, and then something else. Well, I guess that's the first Americans.
That's us.
That's us.
It's kind of funny because they hashtag something else is out there now. They had so much backlash from this, and it's not, it's something that I think is, it's a good point. There are, to recognize each and every individual minority, that we would have what they call a long tail, going all the way down to the tiny minorities, but these are the indigenous peoples of this land. You think you get Native Americans, that would be something great to include in there. So I'm going to leave links to all the stories in the comment section below, but be sure to check that one out. It was kind of interesting.
So the next story I wanted to share is out of Central Washington. U.S. Representative Dan Newhouse is urging congressional action to address the crisis of murdered missing Indigenous women. The lawmaker from Yakima Valley, he actually is urging federal authorities to open a cold case task force. We've talked about a little bit about MMIW, but in Central Washington, the numbers, it's just crazy to understand. But Newhouse is out of Sunnyside, and he sent a letter to the Attorney General William Barr and the U.S. Department of Interior Secretary David Bernhardt requesting a cold case task force. We've had a number of laws passed this recently. President Trump signed the Savannahs Act, we'd been fighting to get passed over the last couple years. It had been stopped by one vote from Good Latte. And also the Not Invisible Act that Deborah Holland put forward and passed into law earlier this year. The cold case offices is just another step towards addressing this long crisis. In Washington State, we have 95 active Native American missing persons reports, and 32 of those are actually in this Yakima County. So it's a real big issue in Yakima and across the state.
When I was looking through this stuff, I was really surprised to see that the Yakima Herald picked this up and gave it such good recognition. Again, the link will be in the comment section below. But I wanted to say, I was going to ask you, when we look at Eastern Washington, it has such a massive population compared to the rest of the state. And then you look over here, so we have Seattle that has their own representative. Spokane just got appointed Dawn Pullen.
As a tribal liaison for the Washington State Patrol.
For the Washington State Patrol, and now Central Washington, but Seattle. So Washington leading the country in most missing and murdered Indigenous women. Spokane for a while led the most in Washington State, and I think it's shifted from that for now, which it could go back, but it's still got to be up there. But to have Yakima, such a small area, have such a massive problem, that's really and there's no pipelines there, there's no oil rigs there, but there is, that's in the heart of farming country, so there's a lot of farming communities out there. It'll be neat to follow this story.
Well, one of the big problems for Yakima is the ongoing jurisdictional fights. Just recently, the Yakima tribe retroceded jurisdiction. Public Law 280 is a very complicated law, which, state has jurisdiction, but the tribe has retroceded and taking that jurisdiction back. There's been a bit of a back and forth with the Washington State Patrol. So understanding the jurisdictionals in Indian country is part of the problem. Why we have, a land base, what people consider lawlessness, where they think they can get away with crimes. And we didn't ask for this. We didn't ask for the Dawes Act, which gave us checkerboard jurisdiction. We didn't ask for Oliphant, which took away our criminal jurisdiction. So we're in a situation that we didn't create.
And we look at problems like this, and this is you talk about things we didn't ask for. We didn't ask for regulation on our gaming. Gaming has been in Indian country since time immemorial. We used to race horses and we did all sorts of different things. But one thing that I thought was really kind of interesting about this was that when you look at how much of a problem this, people say that, oh, wow, how long has this been going on? This thing has been going on since contact. This has been a problem since contact. You're looking at hundreds of years of perpetuating this, and the fact that there isn't something in place. And if you look at the amount of money that is spent in this United States today on all these other things, I'll give you a good example, for politicians to go golfing. Just the amount of money in the last year for politicians to go golfing could fund positions for people in every state in this union for 10 years. And it's crazy that we don't already have something like this. So it'll be interesting to follow that. I'm real glad that you decided to go with that story. Moving right along, we have another story that I thought was pretty cool. This is again out of Indian Country Today. Return of Idaho's Sockeye salmon. And this one was actually done by Mark Trahant, who's the editor of the Indian Country Today. Let's break a few news rules. I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs out of this real quick. Let's break a few news journalism rules. I'm writing about my own tribe. It's a subject I care deeply about, salmon recovery, and my brother turns out to be one of my sources. Other than that, I can be objective. I thought that was kind of funny. He goes on to state, but I'm burying the lead after 2 decades of litigation, mitigation, and field preparation. The sockeye salmon showed a promising return this year to Idaho's Pettit Lake near Stanley, Idaho. The thing is, a lot of people have given up on the Snake River sockeye. The challenges are enormous. Sockeye travel the farthest of all Idaho salmon, a journey of more than 900 miles and climbing more than 6,500 feet. Holy cow, 6,500 feet. That's more than a mile high. That's way up there. So, and that's before they reach the Sawtooth Valley. I just wanted to cover a couple quick numbers that they talk about in here, and some of the. So this is it goes on to state in here, we haven't had a sockeye return to Pettit Lake in over 30 years. 30 years. That's crazy. It says it's a species that's important to the planet and important especially to tribal members. It goes on to talk about how it's kind of the very one of the last statements he makes is it's the stepchild of the salmon. Because it's not really important as a commercial commodity. It's not something that the state profits off of, and it's not something that they make a lot of money in fishing off of, but it is important to tribes. And to see the sockeye coming back to North Idaho, and to see any salmon coming back to North Idaho is a positive change. But what do you think about that?
Well, tribes across the Northwest work hard to bring the salmon back, whether it's Ukut or Kripvik, the Upper Columbia United Tribes. Jeff, you've done a video on tribal water qualities that talked about the reintroduction of salmon. So we're doing everything we can to provide habitat and to have clean water. We're using our water quality standards that's allowed once we have the designation as treatment under Clean Water Act. So we're doing all we can to provide clean, cold water for the salmon.
You mentioned that video that I worked on. It was a great project. I mean, I think it turned out pretty cool. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but the fact was that it was a really cool project to work on, and I got to go out and see reintroduction of the salmon to the Spokane River above the Columbia. Spokane tribe reintroduced some salmon just below the Long Lake Dam, and I got to get some footage of that. So the Spokane Tribal Water Quality Standards video, I'll leave the link in the description below when I post it. If you haven't already, we're going to ask you to go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. That way you can get notifications of every time we go live. You can be updated every time we come out with a new episode. Speaking of, we've got episode 13 coming out, and it's going to be highlights of the Arley Powwow and the Iron Woman Jingle Dress competition with Daviana Madera, who just rocked it. And we've got a little interview that we caught up with her in Elmo I'm going to put in there. So if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. But yeah, that's pretty exciting.
We're excited. She's one of our little gals from right here. She attends the Salish School. We camp with her family along the river, and Indian country. We're family, and so we're real excited, and we're proud of the twins and Daviana, and so we're excited for that upcoming episode.
Yeah, it'll be cool. Every time I see her, because she goes 19 songs. I think it's 55 minutes into it. And when it gets right down to it, she is still running strong. You can see she's still got a lot of pep in her step, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And everybody gets into it. It's really exciting. Really looking forward to seeing that. So,
well, I think it was the twins that actually this summer that they sang you an honor song.
Oh yeah.
When you graduated from Gonzaga MBA, we had a small family gathering, and the girl asked if they could sing an honor song, and so these little Indian girls sang Jeff a song for his graduation from Gonzaga School of Business.
And it was really the neatest thing. I was kind of bummed because we didn't get our graduation ceremony. The commencement wasn't there, but we got out there and we're underneath the stars, and to have those twins sing me a song really just was amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better graduation gift. It really, I'm welling up already, man. It was just awesome.
It was powerful.
Very powerful. So, and yeah.
It gives us hope that next generation, they're hanging on to their culture and traditions and, honoring older people. And it just was really powerful.
All right. So, that being said, we're going to move right along as we or we have a couple more stories we're going to get to.
Okay.
But we are talking about salmon, and this next one is from this one I pulled off of the Kiro website. It's the Pilchuck River. Months after dam removal, Pilchuck River is showing signs of recovery. As water rushes along the Pilchuck River, it's almost too loud to hear. Brett Shattuck, a restoration ecologist with the Tulalip tribe, asked his team whether they've spotted any fish. Don't fall, he says jokingly, wading through the nearly chest-high water to another scientist. They're working their way across the river to get a better glimpse of the location where a dam stood for more than 100 years. The tribe, along with roughly a dozen partner agencies, removed the dam. They removed the dam. Let's see. They removed the dam for good in mid-August. A little more than 3 months later, it's hard to tell anything was ever there from a few chunks of concrete that remain in the riverbank. We got another dam removed. That is awesome. Yeah, and that is, you know, when we look at so many of the dams now that are just filled with workers and people and they're not productive enough to justify the labor and the cost and the environmental impact. And as we move towards renewable energy, I really think that we're going to have a good movement with the dam removal. So, yeah.
Well, how cool is that? Restoration ecologist. You know, our tribes, we hire these folks, and we look at, you know, the vegetation, the watersheds. We're looking at these issues, you know, trying to restore the habitat for salmon. If you talk about water quality, you know, temperature, turbidity, it's the tribes that always say keep the water in the river. You know, everybody's sucking water out. You know, ag country through central Washington, they all want water. And tribes are the ones fighting to keep the water in the river. And because it's for our salmon people, it's for our salmon. We're trying to make sure they have cold, clean, fast-running water so they can survive. If we're sucking all the water out, how are the fish going to survive?
So that brings up a handful of issues. One of which I'm gonna before I forget and move on. Here in Spokane, you know, the Spokane River already has a lot of key players on it, and we had a petition. And I'm gonna have to look into this. I'm gonna update you guys on this. But I know the city of Medical Lake had a request in there wanting to buy 1 million gallons of water annually, and we think about the amount of water that goes through. And, you know, in the summertime, we were talking with Jerry White Jr., the Spokane River keeper, and he actually took us out on the river this last year, and we got to float it. And he was telling us that normally when the water level is low, it gets down to about 1,000 cubic feet per minute. And this year it was down to 850, which is really low. And when you think about that, so you got 1,000 cubic feet per minute, and it would take 1,000 minutes to get into 1 million gallons of water. And it's not necessarily that 1 million gallons, it's when they come back and ask for 5 million. You know, I read an article not that long ago that said that Medical Lake was the fastest growing city in the United States. I had no clue. I haven't been out there in so long, but with all the development that's out there, it doesn't surprise me. And so we're going to have to keep an eye on that. So when we talk about dams, you know, I had the opportunity to go over to the the Elwha Dam. And I thought, when I first heard about this, I was like, man, that'd be cool to see where that dam was. And I had gone about a month after the dam was taken out, and I was walking along one of the sandbars out there. It was a mess because of all of that silt. I think it was like 70 or 80 years that dam was in place. And then once they released it, all that silt that was held up and dammed up all went out, and it was just kind of a mess. And I was thinking, man, I wonder how long it's going to take these fish to come back. And just as I was thinking that, I kind of looked down into the water, and there was a dogfish, salmon, swimming upstream next to me. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. So they're very resilient. And this water quality center video that I did allowed me to talk with Brian Crosley from the Spokane tribe, and he told me and explained to me that now we have the technology with the whoosh technology is what they call it, that we can get salmon over Grand Coulee. And it's a combination of, before, the the slope was too high, and the salmon would swim up, and they would get tired before they got over. And so what they did is they figured out a way to use a couple of fish cannons. And so by using 2 fish cannons instead of having such a massive slope, it tapers it off. So now the fish it takes them 45 seconds to get over the dam, and now they can make it over. But in dams, it's not just the water, it's not just it being taken away, it's not just the runoff and pesticides and all that. It's not just the fish going under and trying to make it back. It's also, you talked about the turbidity, but the dissolved oxygen levels. Every dam that the water goes down releases oxygen, and it lowers that. And we need good dissolved oxygen levels, and we need cool water, clean water for those fish. So it'll be interesting to see how many other dams we can get. I know that was a lot. a lot to it, but I'm sorry. I'm kind of passionate about bringing the salmon back. I love, the salmon. It was our culture.
So there's a lot going on in Indian country right now with the Biden transition. Tribal leaders across the Northwest are working on preparing for the new administration. Yesterday, I was on a call with AT&I, Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians, and leaders across the Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho. They were working with the transition planning team. We met with top folks from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We met with top folks from Health and Human Services. Tribal leaders advocating for their communities across the spectrum. Indian Health Service. With COVID, there is a serious drain on our ability to serve our people. Indian Health Service is often funded at 70% of what it should be, and it's just unfortunate because it's costing lives.
Yeah, it is.
So when we talk about COVID, the CARES Act, I think that was one of our stories that we were going to talk about. But I've seen leaders from the west side. We have communities like Lummi that are working on getting the vaccination in.
Yeah, it's something, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because I wanted to talk about this just for a second. I heard that they released the first of the vaccines in the UK. So they had done that, and I'm just curious. I want to see how long it takes for vaccines from the very first one in the UK to get to Indian country. So this will be day 1, and I want to count this down to see how long it takes to get from the UK all the way through the FDA and distribute it out to Indian country. And our first tribal member, I'm going to watch this, and I want to see how long it takes, because we're on day 1 right now, and it'll be interesting to see how long, especially with all of the challenges in the logistics of distribution and being able to keep it frozen and so forth.
Well, I'd definitely be watching the Lummi tribe. There were 2 different vaccinations, and one of them required a technology that a very deep frozen state, which poses challenges to Indian country. We don't have that kind of equipment and technology. I believe the Lummi tribe is working on securing or has secured some of that equipment so that they can go with that line of vaccination. Unfortunately, not all tribes have that equipment, so it's a real challenge.
Yeah, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and we'll keep you guys updated. That brings us to COVID, which is our top subject of this episode. I know we've gone through a lot of different things, and we're kind of running out of time, but I want to move on real quickly. We did have something that happened. The Colville tribe announced a curfew in Inchelium. It imposed, this was on the 7th. The Colville tribe today imposed a curfew in Inchelium district. The curfew is active each day between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. During this time, all residents of the reservation and visitors to the reservation must remain indoors. Travel is allowed only if essential, such as to or from a verifiable place of employment or to seek urgent medical attention. The curfew is active immediately, and it will remain in place until further notice. Those who violate the curfew may be cited or prosecuted pursuant to the Colville Tribal Code. Now, it goes on to state here that there are 47, the reservation currently has 60 active cases of people suffering from diagnosed COVID-19. Of those cases, 47 of them are in Inchelium. There are an estimated 42 people in preventative quarantine across the reservation, and 36 of those quarantine cases are in Inchelium. It is absolutely necessary to take additional measures at this time to preserve the peace, health, safety, and welfare of the reservations and all surrounding communities. So that being said, I know that it's hard. It's hard to stay home, and we think that these are drastic measures. But I remember when we were first back in March, when we first started having lockdowns and things of that nature, I had heard two things that just shocked me on a global level, and I kind of thought that they would be more widespread and we would have got more attention, but I hadn't seen them since. One thing was there was one country that was shooting people that violated curfew on site. If you are out after curfew hours, the COVID epidemic, they were shooting you. And the other country was arresting people and sentencing them to 10 years in prison. Now, if you think about how drastic those are, all we're asking you to do, all the tribe is asking you, all the state is asking you to do is stay home. When you go out, wear a mask. We're not getting shot. We're not doing 10 years
we're
time.
not shooting an Inchelium. Please,
So those are massive, drastic measures. But if you look around, a lot of those countries that got on it, their numbers never hit 5 digits. They never hit 10,000 cases. And here we're looking at over 200. I think it's 285,000 people that have died from it. That's crazy.
Well, tribal people, we're very social. We're very mobile. It's really hard for us to stay home. That was a tough decision for the Colville Tribal Business Council to make, to do this COVID, to pass that resolution. It was a tough decision. But Inchelium District Council person, Joel Boyd, he said, we just want to protect our community. We just want to keep our people safe. And so some of the tribal members out there in Inchelium, sure, we don't love it, but they appreciate that tribal leadership is trying to keep their community safe.
Yeah, and they say over and over again that a vaccine is not a cure, and it's not going to totally do away with COVID, and we don't know how long it's going to be before we get it. There are all these different things, and we have friends that are in the hospital. There are people in Indian country that are close to many people in the inland Northwest that have passed from COVID. It's real, and everybody that I've talked to that has had it says it's no joke. So stay home. Stay home. Hunker down. You don't have to stay home. You get to stay home. You have a safe home where it's warm and you can be with your family and spend some time, bust out the Yahtzee or play some stick game or something, man. But we got to get through this.
Our prayers and support go out to the Inchelium community. We just, Jeff just posted a video from Inchelium Days, and be sure and check that out, Tony Lou Music. But we love Inchelium. When we get a chance, we'll go over and camp on Rogers Bar. Jeff comes from the Ferguson side of the family, and we're often up there. So take care, please.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to keep things moving along. We got more COVID stuff. The Spokane tribe, they are under a stay-at-home order from the Spokane Tribal Business Council until further notice. But we want to talk about some of the things that tribes are doing with their CARES Act money. I know that's a big issue in Indian country. It's a big issue because a lot of different things. We talked a little bit about the tribe in Montana that just got federal recognition are having a hard time. They have till the end of the month to spend all that money, and so that's an issue. We have issues ranging from one end of the spectrum to the other because so many things happen in Indian country. But one of the things that the Spokane tribe has done, the things they've focused on, one of them is broadband on the reservation, which is really good, and the other is a PPE distribution. So the PPE distribution for Spokane tribal members is December 7th and 8th have already passed, but they have one coming up at the Spokane TANF building December 11th from 12 to 3 p.m. and at the West End Center December 15th is a Tuesday from 2 to 4:30, and the Ford Youth Center is on December 16th, and that's Wednesday from 2 to 4 p.m. And they're distributing thermometers, disposable gloves, masks, hand sanitizer, and sanitizing wipes. So that's a good thing that they've been able to do with that money. Other tribes out there, and I'll leave links to these. I'm not going to go too much into these real quickly, but I wanted to give some examples as to what some other tribes are doing. The Navajo Nation, they have the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority completes project using CARE Acts fund, expanding internet access. So internet on reservations is a big deal, and they've been able to do that on the Navajo res. Another thing they're able to do down there, the Utility Authority connected 335 people to the electric grid with CARES Act funds. So, which is really positive. You know, a lot of those people, it's not that they didn't want it. You know, some of them don't want to have the electricity, and they prefer to live in the old ways, but not everybody is like that. Some people, they don't have electricity and running water because they haven't been able to get it. The infrastructure simply was not there to provide those services, and now for 335 families on the Navajo res it is. Now, the citizens of the Potawatomi Nation offer coronavirus relief programs for tribal citizens and businesses. So they're helping out businesses. So there's part of that can be utilized to help small businesses. And then the CARES Act, they have if you want to know more about this, there is a document that they have that covers the implications for tribes. And I am going to leave the I'll show you quickly the document. So this outlines what is available and all of the different things that tribes can use it for. Direct assistance for small businesses, assistance for IHS. They have Bureau of Indian Education funding, housing and urban development funding, child care and development block grants, family services, telehealth, broadband grants, rural health care, education waivers, museum and library assistance, relief fisheries, things of that nature.
Jeff, I can tell you that every tribe is under real strict restraints on how they can expend those funds. At every tribe, there's accounting folks that are making sure that tribal programs expend those dollars appropriately, or they have to pay them back.
So I know one of the concerns is that when you get out there, this money was allocated back on March 31st, 2020. They had critical assistance that went out, but this money has so many guidelines, and it has two different sides of it. You have the governmental administrative side that has to look and follow all these guidelines, otherwise the tribes have to pay it back. And the tribes don't want to have to do that. They want to try to be able to help their people. And then when you look at the administration, you look at some tribes, you know, we only have 5 tribal council. Some councils have, I think I heard that one of the Lakota tribes has like 21 tribal council. When you have that many districts, that many different people representing that many different needs, it's hard for everybody to agree on anything to get, and to have a deadline. You know, I know a lot of this money has to be spent by the end of the year, and it makes it really challenging. So,
and Jeff, let's just be clear. How you phrase that is allocated in March. Well, that doesn't mean that's when the funds came down. So it was allocated, but those funds didn't get out until tribal communities until late this summer. There was litigation on which tribes, you know, there was litigation on Alaskan Native corporations, if they qualified as tribes, because there was a large segment of that money going to corporations, tribal corporations. So when the money gets allocated versus when it actually gets out to Indian country is a big difference. So our tribal leaders have been working hard to develop programs and guidelines. You know, for anybody to have the money dispersed, you have to account for costs, whether it's medical costs, COVID, that they have to be COVID directly related to COVID. And there's accountants that are making sure tribes are spending it correctly on our side, our in-house accountants. A shout out to those accountants that are making sure it's spent in appropriate ways.
you brought up something, it was a really good point. You said that not all the money got out in March. There was an article I read that a tribe didn't even receive their money till December, and they have till the end of the month to spend it. How do you spend $25 million in a month? And they didn't have, well, one of the things was they didn't have because it was a new tribe, they didn't have a infrastructure. They didn't have the infrastructure to turn around and allocate it, or even to decide how to allocate the funds. You know, these are issues that we have in Indian country. We don't have a government that was established 200 years ago based on something that's been established for 400 or 500 years that is being recognized by the federal government in order to be able to do these. There's a lot of little things that make it really tedious. One of the cool things that I saw and heard about was the Colville tribe. Talk to me a little bit about what the Colville tribe's been doing with their money.
Yeah, the Colville tribe is working on a treatment facility, a drug and alcohol treatment facility out in Keller. Just because of COVID, addiction doesn't stop. And in fact, we have more stresses on our tribal communities. Our drug and alcohol treatment counselors, they cannot have direct services. We have internet challenges. So this makes it hard to provide treatment to folks. And so we have a lot of issues with drug and alcohol, and COVID only magnifies the problem.
Well, we talk about treatment, that's one of the biggest problems. Tribes look at, okay, so we want to be able to get this money to our people. We want to be able to help them. We have this chunk of money. We have this deadline. We have to be able to provide it to people that need it. And so they go through an application process so they can ask them, what will you use this for? What do you need it for? How is it going to help you? How has COVID affected you? And some people don't need it. I know it's hard to believe that sometimes that some people don't need it, but there are people that have profited through COVID. This whole thing, if you look at Amazon, as an example, they've made billions off of this, and there's other people that have made money too. So not everybody necessarily needs it. So they have to first of all be allocated the funds, receive it. Then if they want to be able to distribute it, they have to be able to go through and vet all of the applications, and then they have to turn around and push that through accounting and get accounting to cut checks for everybody and be able to make sure that everybody addresses are up to date, make sure that the right people are getting it, people aren't getting doubled up, and then they got to determine whether or not kids are going to get the full amount, if it's going to go, some of it's going to go into trust, or all of these different things that are going to meet the guidelines that have to be able to go through that. And then once the money is distributed, they have to, as tribal council, as leadership, have to pray to the Creator that this money is going to be used for good things. Because people that are using don't always make the best decisions, and sometimes, unfortunately, when they get a big chunk of change, if they get $1,000 or $2,000, it can lead to devastating problems. And as leadership, I know that's not something that they want on their shoulders. They don't want to say, oh, well, you were on council when you gave us all that money and we had all of this blowback from it. So there's all these different things that are in play. And when I hear about tribes that are putting in place programs that are going to help with broadband, when they're putting in treatment centers, when they're helping with PPE, when they're doing all these educational services, things along that lines, those are all great programs that has been able to help with. But I know that some of the larger tribes, the larger councils, are really having a hard time with it. So hopefully we can pray for them and help them, give them some wisdom so they can get things they need done.
Yeah, lots of challenges in Indian country. Jeff, that's getting about to be our time. I know you have one last story, but I would like to say happy birthday to Sharon Gowdy from the Yakima Nation, one of our great leaders. It's her birthday today, so we want to wish Sharon Gowdy a happy birthday. But Jeff, to wrap it up, I think you had one more story about one of our local natives playing ball.
Playing ball, yeah. Sharon Gowdy's AT&I. Happy birthday, Sharon. So we have a local. So this one is Jacinta Buckley, embraces Native American heritage. Now, I found this on the UNLV website, which was pretty cool. So when we talk about Indian country and we talk about, so first of all, shout out to Jacinta. Good job. This is really exciting. UNLV, that's a Division I. This is kind of a big deal. We look at all the natives that play ball and how many of them get to that point. We've got a Spokane tribal member here, and on that website, if you get a chance, be sure to check it out. It's got a great interview. She has some really, really great things to say about her journey and her tribe and about the inland Northwest and so forth. So, yeah, I wanted to bring that up. That's just really kind of cool.
I had the pleasure of watching Jacinta for years. Her mom, Yvette Buckley, is a relative of mine. But watching Jacinta at AAU all those years, her and her cousins, they worked hard, but Jacinta really continued to do the work. at AAU through the years. She was just outstanding. And to have one of our little tribal members out there playing at UNLV, that's just awesome. We are so proud of her.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep an eye on her, and we're going to wish her luck. Hopefully, if she wants to, if that's her deal, maybe she'll make it to the WNBA. It'll be real exciting to watch that. We did an interview with Shoni Schimmel. We were able to get out and McCormick. What was her name? The McCormick. Gosh, I forgot now. We were able to interview those gals, and they're just the kids love them. They were great. They're really inspiring. Thank you so much, Jacinta, for putting yourself out there and going all the way. Congratulations on that. Congratulations to Yvette and who's Yvette?
Dude, I didn't say his name. Why would I?
Okay. Anyhow, congratulations to Jacinta's parents. I know you're super proud. We'll leave the link to that story so you can read the interview in the comment section below. Thank you once again for joining us, and until Friday, we'll be back on Friday at 8 p.m.
All right. Everyone have a good day. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.